To be completely honest, I've been thinking about Levi Ackerman's situation for quite some time now. He's in a very weird predicament within the story, within his character, and how he's utilized currently. Definitely had an interesting time with him, and I feel a lot of Levi fans are very excited to see him somewhat come back into the story, even at the weakened state he's currently within. Last month's chapter done a lot of different things. Obviously, it was devastating losing such an iconic character that has been there since the beginning, and the way she went out was beautiful. Tragic, but incredibly well done and fulfilling. It was a really nice send-off for her character and pretty much what she meant for the story. Ever since that chapter, my suspicion regarding Levi's future has been increasing rather drastically. And ever since that fateful encounter with Zeke, everything has been somewhat pointing into this direction. I'd hate for Isayama to go into the climatic final events within the story and leave out one of the, if not the most powerful and prominent person that has pushed the narrative forward with a lot of these fights, with a lot of these encounters. Levi has been a main staple, a main powerhouse, and a force to be reckoned with. He has talent, skill, and everything you could equate to being a perfectionist at its finest. It shows in his prowess, it shows in his battles, all the fights he's been in. He has come out on top in more ways than one. And now that we're getting into these final moments where power is the most necessary thing to potentially stop Eren, or at least give them a chance to stop Eren. Funny enough, all of these people, all of their powerful hitters are starting to disappear. Hanji with her intellect and even her fighting prowess is no longer a thing. Annie with the Titan ability that she has is potentially no longer a thing with how she departed. Levi being severely injured thanks to that Zeke encounter, and probably one of the most difficult pills to swallow, is not as viable as he once was. So where does his character lead to? How do we get that potential redemption, or at least some sort of satisfying conclusion to his character? Once again, it goes back to that question regarding how Isayama wants to handle him, and how he wants to handle him within the finale of the story. He's no longer that powerhouse that we knew him as. The potential of him coming back and doing something powerful and incredible is definitely there, but the cost is ever so high. The cost of his life, the cost of more severe injuries, anything at this point forward for Levi can equal to death. A situation or event that would potentially be extremely easy for Levi, or not even enough for him to break a sweat, is now something that could kill him off completely. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since that Zeke event. The two different opinions regarding that event was Levi should have died, or they're surprised that he didn't. From there, his character has allowed for other characters to kind of come through a little bit further and play a more prominent role within power, within fighting prowess, and even just opening up towards him or even around him. This is something somewhat unknown to Levi. We've not necessarily seen him in that position all too often, and now that he's forced within it thanks to his injuries, there's only so much you can play on that until we get to a situation like where we are now. The talking, the character development is coming to a conclusion because the narrative is coming to a conclusion. One thing that Isayama did play on that I actually really appreciated was him not being able to do anything. Relying on Levi was such a common thing, so seeing him so vulnerable, so depressed, or even just sad or upset with himself that he couldn't actually do anything, gives him a more realistic position to stand on. He feels like a more authentic character, not someone that could just blitz through absolutely everyone, and that's not devaluing his character all the way up to this point. It's more so something that I felt was always needed for him. And don't get me wrong, he's had some rather well humanizing points within his journey, but this is the time that it hits probably the hardest. The time where power and fighting is crucially needed to save the entirety of the earth. He is not available, and he is not a viable option to lean on. I see two completely different paths for Levi. On one hand, Isayama could well and truly kill him off in a way that may be somewhat similar to Hanji, and I know a lot of people already would absolutely hate that idea, but thinking about Levi potentially sacrificing himself or pushing himself to a limit, knowing his injuries, knowing his capabilities right now, going above and beyond that to buy time or open up an opportunity for other people, Armin and Mikasa, to get to where they need to be, sounds like something he would do. He wouldn't complain about his injuries, he never has necessarily. He'd just continue pushing forward and continue fighting till he can't no longer. Him and Hanji going out in a similar fashion, I feel would be pretty symbolic. And it could easily be the reason why Isayama has allowed him to go on this journey. He could have easily just wrote him off in the previous chapter and sent him with Annie, for example. And as much as people definitely wouldn't have liked that, and it's a very jarring and weird conclusion for his character, that was always an opportunity. So putting him into the battlefield now, there's really not all too much he can do other than fight. And if he's going to fight these titans, you know he's not going to hold back. Him going out, swinging and opening up a path for people sounds right up his alley. It'd be very emotional, very impactful, just empowering. What we've come to know and love his character for, and sending him off the exact same way would be heartbreaking. The other path I see, however, is one where he actually lives and is probably horribly crippled, even more so where he is now. I still think he's going to fight, but his limitations will obviously hold him back, where he won't be able to do as much and he won't push above and beyond those things. And it kind of depends on how you view Levi's mindset at the moment. The prior one I just mentioned sounds right up his alley of something he would do personally. We know what he's like as a fighter and how above and beyond he truly goes. But in a situation where his body has these hard limitations that physically stop him, they may also be his savior. There may be a point where he cannot get back up and it actually saves him, or he gets forcibly removed from the battlefield by another Titan shifter and can't do anything because of those injuries he's sustained, on top of whatever other injuries he may gain from this battle. What's great about the path that potentially keeps him alive is that it immediately circles him back to the mindset he was in before, right after his incident, where he felt somewhat depressed and disappointed within himself that he couldn't actually achieve everything that he wanted, that he couldn't fight and provide that support that people relied on him for. Instead, it's somewhat more of a middle ground. He still provided support, maybe something he's not personally happy with, or knowing that he could have done more if he didn't have his injuries, thus getting retreated forcefully by someone else and having to live with the consequences and actions of not being able to go above and beyond. There's always the opportunity that he actually fights Zeke as well for the final time, but to be entirely honest, I don't know where Zeke is. I wouldn't be surprised if he's completely out of the story at this point, and I'm kind of hoping that's not the case. I'm somewhat grasping onto the hope that Zeke is somewhat of a curveball for this entire situation. I don't really know why Zeke would verse him again other than revenge, but you could also have the idea and understanding between both of them working with each other, and that in itself potentially goes down a whole different route. Zeke and Levi somewhat forgiving each other because of the situation that's currently going on, them fighting with each other and either or saving the other. That could be a heartbreaking situation to witness. If Levi sacrificed himself to save Zeke, or even if Zeke sacrificed himself to save Levi. The way Levi would perceive an event like that, even though it sounds weird after everything he's been through and the incredible fights he's had with Zeke, a conclusion like that I think would be really nice and would open Levi's eyes and his mind a lot more. But we don't know where he is or what mental state he's in. He could be obliterated, he could be stuck within Eren's realm or paths, whatever you want to call it. I assume Zeke is still stuck on Paradise, so if he does come back within the story, is he going to swim across the ocean and then swing across Eren's ribcage within his Titan? I honestly don't know. However, I am really excited for the upcoming chapter. I'm excited to see what Isayama does and how he brings everything to hopefully and most likely a very empowering and beautiful conclusion, not only for the narrative but for the characters, for the events that incorporates the entirety of the world and human race. But I'm also excited to see what you think. How do you feel Isayama is going to handle Levi? Is it leading up to his death? Is it leading up to him being critically injured again, or a rematch with Zeke, or Zeke and Levi working together and finally coming to understand one another and one of them sacrificing themselves to save the other? How do you feel this is all going to unravel? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.